Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
I'd like to welcome you to the admin committee meeting. Do we have any board member concerns this morning?
None here.
Okay. How about reported travel? Do we have any of that name? Or how about, wait, do we have
We have my travel, Dr. Burke, for the Air Resources Board.
Okay.
They're actually meeting twice in June, and they won't meet in July or August, so I have to travel up there 2 times at the end of June.
Okay. What about the Washington DC trip?
I'm sorry, Dr. Burke, what was the question?
Is the Washington DC trip?
So we'll be looking into making those arrangements. We got the confirmation from Dr. Parker last night. 28th is good. So we'll be looking at possibly departing on the 26th or meetings on the 27th and 28th. But we'll confirm that hopefully later today or early next week.
Did we vote on it?
Well, why don't we take Miss Mitchell's travel, and I'll approve temporarily when it comes through the Washington D.C. trip, and then we can bring it back for post travel approval. How's that? I'll accept the motion, Dr. Parker.
I move that.
There's no motion
approve Mrs.
required,
Mitchell.
Dr. Burke. There's no motion
Really?
required. I'm looking at our council, and that's what he's telling me.
But you have money to approve that.
Right. So there is no motion necessary to approve any travel?
It's just a report, Dr. Burke. And-
Okay.
And you've got the authority to approve.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, how about compensation for board member?
Board members.
Do we have any this month? You guys sound like I feel.
So you should have the agenda item for staff and the various for the board assistants and board consultants. And on that particular item, there just needs to be a motion.
Yeah, and a vote.
Oh, yeah, I got
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion for approval. Oh, that's everybody's. We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Vice Chair White,
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Aye.
Dr. Parker,
Aye.
Dr. Burke,
Aye.
motion passes 4-0.
Okay, how about then the next item is out of country travel?
There is no out-of-country travel to report, Dr. Burke.
How about the pre-audit conference?
Good morning, Dr. Burke, committee members. A couple months ago, the administrative committee selected BCA Watson Rice to serve as the financial statement and federal single auditors for the fiscal year that ends in a couple of weeks. Today we have managing partner Mike DeCastro and audit partner Helen Chu here to talk a little bit about the work that they're going to perform as this audit gets underway. So I'll turn it over to them at this point.
Great, thank you. It's nice to be here again, and we thank you for the trust you have in us to be your auditors this year. This initial communication with the committee is required by auditing standards. It's a way of establishing a line of communication with those charged with governance. And so this is the initial communication. If during the audit we see a need to meet with the committee again during the audit, we will discuss if any significant matters arise. And then if not, then at the end of the audit, we are required to meet with the committee again to go over the results of the audit. So I'd like to just quickly give you a brief overview of what our responsibilities are of auditors. We are responsible for auditing the financial statements of South Coast Air Quality Management District. And also 2 other smaller audits are required of the Building Corporation and the Health Effects of Air Pollution Foundation. In addition to the audit of the financial statements, we are also required to do a single audit, which is to review all the major federal programs that are funded here at AQMD and to give an opinion on AQMD's compliance with those major federal programs. We will also issue, if needed, a report on internal control deficiencies and/or a management letter if we identify during our audit any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in controls over both financial and compliance areas. The planned timing of this year's audit, we will begin the week of August 8th, and not the entire time, but off and on, we'll be here and have our audit fieldwork testing completed by the end of September. We plan then to have a draft report ready to be discussed with the committee in early November. November 10th is the target date. As I mentioned at the end of the audit, there will be just certain matters that we are required to communicate with the committee, such as any audit adjustments of significance that you need to be aware of, any disagreements with management during the audit, any difficulties encountered, or any change, adoption, in new accounting policies that the committee needs to be aware of. And so with this initial communication, it gives the committee the opportunity to provide any input to us as auditors. You don't have to do it today if you don't have any thoughts right now on those input. You can do during the audit is appropriate. But some of the input that we would like to obtain, if needed, if any, major changes during 2017 compared to 2016. Any particular attention the committee would like us to focus on during the audit that we typically, outside of what we typically will do. Any issues that the committee may be aware of that might impact the audit. Any significant legal matters that we need to be made aware of. Any knowledge of any fraudulent activities. Any ethics and conflict of interest concerns that the committee might have. Or any other matters relevant to the audit of the financial statements of the single audit of AQMD. So with that completes our initial communication responsibilities with the committee. I'll take any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions for the auditor?
None here.
Okay, thank you. No, there are no questions this morning. We look forward to your next report.
Great, thank you.
Mr. O'Kelly?
Thank you, Dr. Burke, committee members. This next item is the status report that we present monthly to let you know that things are moving forward on major IT projects. I'll just touch on a couple of them. The website migration process is still moving on. We're looking at July, August deployment. Dr. Burke, on our current website, when Chris demonstrated the new website, you had some questions about board meetings. So if you go on our current website, there's a couple ways to get to the board agendas, but if you look right on the front page on that blue bar, there's an item now. You can click right there and get to board agenda directly. So that's included on the current website. The permit systems automation is probably one of the bigger projects that we have going right now. The impact would be district-wide. The 400A form programming and all of that's done. We're doing the acceptance testing for dry cleaners, for gas station equipment. That's about a week behind the dry cleaners. Spray booths are going to be after that, so we're still looking at a July, August go live period. Of course, there'd be some information provided and outreach done before we go live. So that's moving forward. We've got a new agenda tracking system that should come online in August, and the Replace Your Ride automation is going live next week. There are other things going on, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does any of my colleagues have any questions for
None here.
Mr. O'Kelly as it relates to this matter?
None here.
How about Ben? Do you have anything
Nope.
for him?
Nope, none here.
Okay. Okay. Then why don't we move to item 7?
Thanks again, Dr. Burke, committee members. This item relates to the item we just spoke to. This is asking for authorization to execute amendments and to fund some contracts to keep moving forward with some of the projects that just described and a few new ones. We need to do an upgrade of our PeopleSoft financial system. This was included in the budget. We're asking for $200,000 to continue moving forward with the online permit processing, to do any final modifications to phase 1 and to get started on phase 2 with workflow processes being included in phase 2. Another budgeted item for Title V system modifications, and another budgeted item for various class systems maintenance. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We're asking to add money to contractors that are pre-qualified contractors that were approved by the board. And when we have tasks, we put bids out and we get bids back in. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Move approval. Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of this item.
Is it an action item?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll second.
Do we need a motion on this item, Kurt?
Yes, Dr. Burke.
I'll accept a motion on this item.
Security moved it.
You have a motion and a second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Vice Chairman Knight,
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Aye.
Dr. Parker,
Aye.
Dr. Burke,
Aye.
motion passes 4-0.
You know, Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
Starting over on page 1 on the agenda, I'm just asking a question, General Counsel. He says action discussion items. Is that normal? Do we usually have the action items and with the discussion items? Or do we have the action item one?
Yeah, Dr. Parker, they are very often combined under that joint heading.
Okay.
Dr. Parker,
Okay,
we'll make it
let's not stop
much,
Mr. O'Kelly. Let's not stop Mr. O'Kelly.
sorry, Dr. Burke, I was just saying that we will make clear
Oh.
in future versions that the action item requiring a vote will be much more readily identifiable.
Okay.
And I turn it over to Mr.
Okay.
O'Kelly.
Thanks again, Dr. Burke, committee members. This item seeks to adopt amendments to the administrative code sections that relate to travel reimbursements. This section of the administrative code has not been updated since 2006. There was a strike and add. The version that's attached shows the whole sections of the admin code. You received a strike and add version as an addendum through an email last night. But I'll cover the 4 major things that we're seeking to do here with this amendment. The first item, the meal expense limits have been set at $50 since 2006. We're recommending those limits be changed to the limits that are provided by the federal government. They're based on the actual locale of the travel. So if you travel in Sacramento, there's a $64 limit. If you travel in San Francisco, there's a $74 limit, so on and so forth. So it seeks to update that $50 per day, which is about 11 years old, to more current and locale-based reimbursement rates. The second item is to require that since we would use these per diem rates, the federal government and the IRS allow us to not require receipts if we stick with those per diem rates. We're requesting that change be made. It'll reduce just paperwork that has to be done by the person who's traveling and then by the staff that has to process the reimbursements and go through each of the receipts and make sure that there weren't overages or anything was purchased out of ordinary. The one change we cannot make is for board members and for hearing board members. Because of state law, hearing board and governing board members will still be required to provide receipts. So the limits will go up, but receipts would still be required by governing board and hearing board members per state law. The next item is currently we have limits, but then the administrative code says that the executive officer can waive those limits. And I think in working with legal counsel, we've determined that that effectively negates the limits that you were supposed to have by law in the first place. So what we've done is effectively increase the limits based on locale. So theoretically, there shouldn't be a need for the executive officer to approve limits beyond that. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or provide any clarification.
What was the motivation for this review?
I think, Dr. Burke, there were claims that when people are traveling with a $50 limit and people are traveling to DC, San Francisco, Sacramento, and even for myself, I consider myself pretty frugal. It's hard to get a breakfast at a hotel for less than $10. I think in some cases it can be hard to get lunch for $15, depending on locale. So you see most other jurisdictions will have limits that are based on the specific locale of the travel. The district just hadn't done that before, and we thought that that made sense. Plus, it reduces the paperwork burden, not just on the traveler, but on the staff that are processing these. And it reduces, when it comes to public records requests, when you do a per diem, it's a flat dollar amount. There's no more and no less, as opposed to providing pages of physical receipts or copies of physical receipts. So those were things that kept coming up regularly, and requests potentially to go over the limit because our limit's so low. So it seemed that it made sense to update this part of the policy and to clarify.
I'm not sure how I feel about this.
And Dr. Burke, if I could just ask Mr. O'Kelly to speak to, how does this apply to board members?
So board members still have to provide receipts based on state law. So there will still be that burden that the district is not, unless Kurt corrects me, is not allowed to waive that responsibility. But for employees, and I can just speak from other government agencies that I work for, it generally is standard practice to offer the per diem, so it eliminates the paperwork and requests for additional reimbursements beyond lower limits from the locality.
If I could add, Dr. Burke, I asked when this came through for review, kind of what's the impact? Is this going to be more expenses paid or less? And Mike basically said they looked at it, it's really kind of a wash. It's not going to increase the amount of reimbursement overall. It'll probably just be about the same, and it'll be a lot.
I'm sorry, I can't see who you are.
I'm sorry,
Jill.
This is Jill.
Jill.
I'm hiding behind Barbara.
Oh,
So that was one of the questions I wanted to know was, is this going to increase the amount we're reimbursing? And Mike said it's pretty much a wash. So it's just a simpler mechanism.
And it saves a lot of staff time by doing
It
it
does,
this way.
yeah. If you go on a trip for 3 days and you've got meal expenses, you've got a whole envelope of receipts that you have to write down and track, and then they have to get checked, so it's.
did you go on the Washington DC trip, Joe?
I did not, no.
Okay, well, let's take the roll on, if I can get a motion in a second, we'll take the roll on this matter.
I'll move the item.
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Vice Chair Benoit?
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell?
Aye.
Dr. Parker?
Aye.
Dr. Burke?
Abstain.
Passes 3-1.
Okay. Mr. O'Kelly,
Yes, Dr. Burke.
I expected to see our modification of the hearing board's compensation on this morning's agenda. I don't see it.
Dr. Burke, in that a discussion I had with Mike, the request came after the agenda had been posted, after the time had passed for adding items to the agenda. So we understood that there would be a directive at the end of the meeting to put together a proposal to take to the board in at the July board meeting.
Okay, but I get confused. These dates seem to move around, and I try to keep track of them, and I think I do fairly well. But sometimes I feel like I'm putting which walnut shell is a pea under, When is the last date
It's
for you to put something in?
Hours.
Huh?
there's a 72-hour time limit. So so for the meeting today, it would have been Tuesday at 10 o'clock. The agenda would have had to have been posted with that item on it.
What about under other business?
Well, what happened to the old, I want to put something on the board agenda in 48 hours as an emergency item? What happened to that?
As an urgency item, yeah, if there's a matter that came to the attention of the board after the posting of the agenda, and there's a need to take immediate action on the item, then the board can vote to add it as an urgency item. But both of those.
And who makes a determination whether it's an urgency item or not?
The board does.
Well, how does the board meet to decide if it's an urgency item to put on the thing before? I mean, it's like which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Does that mean that the item goes on the agenda and then at the board meeting, the board has the right not to hear it? How does that work?
So typically, the way that it's worked, Dr. Burke is a member of the board or the staff. A board member has approached the staff, or the staff has approached a board member after the posting of the agenda and brought to their attention a matter that needs to be decided. It's an absolute necessity, and that's really the criterion, that there's an absolute necessity to decide the matter before a regular agendized meeting. And once that discussion occurs, then the matter is presented either to the full board or to the full committee for a determination whether those criteria have been met, and if the board by a 2/3 vote agrees that it has, then it goes on the agenda for consideration.
I'm not going to take everybody's time to discuss this, but maybe when we have a minute alone together, Kurt, we can discuss this. This is certainly not my recollection of what's happened over the past 25 years, but I don't want to get into that. But it's my understanding that it will be on the agenda for consideration at the July meeting.
Yes, that's if that's your directive, Dr. Burke, it will be on the agenda.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, moving on to the next item.
Good morning, Dr. Burke and members of the committee. This item is a routine annual process to recognize and appropriate federal funds for some of the specialized programs within the air monitoring network, and to purchase some air monitoring equipment and vehicles in support of that. Also, there's another item to transfer funds and appropriate for the purchase of 2 instruments for incident response. It's laboratory equipment that needs replacement. I'm happy to take any questions on this item.
Are there any questions by my colleagues?
None here.
None here.
I don't have any questions. I would like to ask that staff, and I think that Mr. Nasser, you can appreciate this, would compile a summary list showing the number as well as the amount of dollars that we're getting from the various different federal agencies, especially EPA and DOT, et cetera. I think that would be good for us to know whether or not they are regulatory, statutory, or just some kind of grants or something of that nature. If that would not be too difficult, since we know that. I would like to know that before we go back to Washington.
Very good. We'll do it.
Thank you very much. May I get a motion on this item?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Vice President,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mitchell,
Aye.
Dr. Parker,
Aye.
Dr. Burke,
Aye.
motion passes 4-0.
Kurt?
Dr. Burke, this item is to create a pre-qualified list of law firms providing environmental litigation services. One list would be for the district, the other list is for the hearing board. For the district, staff is recommending a list of 2 firms, and those 2 firms can be found on page 48 of your packet of materials. The 2 firms are Shute, Mahaly, and Weinberger, and Woodruff, Spradlin, and Smart. For the hearing board, there's just a single firm on the hearing board list, and that is Strumwasser and Wucher. We're making this recommendation for the hearing board in conjunction with input from the hearing board.
So what you're saying is the hearing board gives a sole source recommendation?
Yeah, there was just one law firm that.
How much is the amount for the hearing board's legal firm?
It's budgeted at $15,000.
Okay, I'm not going to argue over that. Okay. Any questions by any of my colleagues?
Well, I have one question. When we say local firm, that an entity is not a local firm, without me going back and reading all of this whole thing, local means what? They're not within our 4-county regional geographic area?
That's right, yes.
Are they within the state?
I'm sorry, what was?
The
Are
local,
they within
Oh,
the state?
no. Shute, Mahaly, and Weinberger is San Francisco-based law firm.
Oh, so they're not in the state.
No, they are in the state. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Okay. Look, I'm going to say the politically incorrect thing here. I never see a law firm, I've seen one in 25 years on any of these lists. There's got to be a Hispanic lawyer somewhere that knows something. There's got to be a black lawyer somewhere that knows something. How come we can't find them?
Well,
Do we advertise in the black lawyers in the Latino law groups?
It's not about where you advertise. It's about how you pick them. Now, I don't want to make these guys responsible for any trepidations I have, because they're probably great law firms. But how much is the one ours is 400 what?
375 and 4.25.
Is how much is the total amount? Possible for the
yeah,
for Mr. Weinberger's firm. For Mr. Weinberger's firm.
you know, Dr. Burke, the budgeted amount for this total item is around $200,000, $250,000. We very often spend considerably more than that amount. There have been years when we've paid these two.
When was the last time we had a firm that was headed by a woman?
Shoot Mahoney and Weinberger
So-
is headed by a woman, Dr. Burke. In fact, it's a majority women-owned firm. The names of the partners represent folks that are not, that happen to represent men that are no longer with the firm because the firm is about 30 years old, but it's a women-owned firm.
That's a move in the right direction. It's a move in the right direction. Okay. Well, I've said what I've got to say about it. It's,
It's food for thought.
it's definitely food for thought. Food for thought. Because we all live in the same world. And we all participate in the same government. But I'm glad that this is a woman's firm. And I'll be happy to support them in that, under that guise. Okay? Do we have a motion and a second?
Yes.
I'll move approval.
Second,
Okay, will the clerk call the roll?
Vice Chair Benoit is absent for now. Councilmember Mitchell?
yes. I thought you said Mitchell. I'm sorry. I didn't.
We haven't
Maybe we
heard
can
you,
start over because
Councilmember.
Let's call the roll again, please, Nancy.
Dr. Parker?
Yes,
Dr. Burke?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Councilmember Mitchell?
Sounds like we lost.
We have no audio. She's giving us the thumbs up.
raise your hands if you say. As the song says, let the church say amen.
I think we have a unanimous decision here. Okay. Mr. Fine?
Thank you, Dr. Burke, members of the committee. I have attached a brief presentation on this, but in the interest of time, I'll just hit the highlights. Committee members know the importance and utility of our MATES program, our Multiple Air Toxics Exposure Study Program. Staff is in the process of planning MATES 5, the 5th installment, to begin in 2018. This board letter represents the first board letter that is needed to get started on purchases of equipment, contracts, some RFPs and RFQs, as well as some sole source purchase orders to get the equipment in the lab and the field necessary to deploy by 2018. We do plan on coming back at a subsequent meeting to include some requests for some more enhanced monitoring. This year we think, as in every MATE study, we have an area of focus. In this MATE study, staff is proposing to focus on monitoring communities around refineries. So we want to meet with our MATES technical advisory group to go over some things, and then we'll come back to the board. Those refinery monitoring requests will dovetail nicely with the work we're doing in Torrance and the work we'll be doing on our rulemaking to require the refineries to do monitoring in those communities and at the fence line. And this will help advance the technology. But we're going to come back at another date for that. This board letter will just get us started in terms of purchasing the equipment we need. There's no the budgetary impact of the general budget. There is none. It's coming out of the Clean Fuels Program Fund, a special fund, as we have done in the past. And then as we come back later, we'll also be looking to utilize some of our special funds to fund some of the enhanced monitoring work. Happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. Dr. Fine, and we don't have to take the time now, but I would love to one day see someone come and tell us, we're talking about a lot of monitoring going on and spending a lot of money for monitoring. My question is, what are we going to do with all this information? You know, to the extent itself, are we planning on using it primarily to make new rules, regulations of some sort? We're talking about giving folks, the general public, a lot of information that is highly technical. Is that going to create more of an alarm situation, et cetera? Or is it really information that we're going to know that, hey, don't stand right here, or don't do this because it's really very toxic? But is this information really going to be able to help us translate into improving the quality of air? Or is it just going to say this is where the air pollution really is?
Dr. Parker, this program has and will lead to those types of reductions. There's many benefits of this program. One is to track improvements over time in our toxic reduction efforts. And we have seen those reductions from both mobile sources and stationary sources. But often what comes up in the MATE studies is through the monitoring, we identify a certain area that has perhaps a slightly elevated level of a certain toxic, and then that points us in certain directions of where we might want to look at certain types of facilities or certain types of processes that we may not have known existed or were emitters. One example is several years ago, the cement plants as a source of hexavalent chromium. That was not known to anybody, but the MATE study was able to point that out, led to enforcement action, led to rulemaking, and led to reduction in emissions. So there's many benefits to this program. That's just one, and the information is very useful for the public. There's very few studies like this in the world at this level of detail. One of the results is a map of the basin where anyone can go online and click on their neighborhood and know what their air toxic risk is at a very high level of detail, and that is used in many other for other researchers, for members of the public. You often see MATES maps provided to you at testimony at committees and board meetings. So this has been a very successful program, and we can go into more detail on that maybe at a future mobile source committee meeting.
Dr. Burke, can I add a comment?
Yeah.
Surely.
Dr. Burke, I just want to remind the committee that this MATES project has been going on for several decades. This is the 5th version now. We had MATES 2 in the late 1990s, which was the first study that had been done after diesel particulate was identified as a carcinogen. And that study was critical in letting the air pollution community know the enormous impact of diesel in toxic air contaminants in California. That resulted not only in your initiative to adopt the FREET rules to reduce diesel air pollution, but also the California Air Resources Board adopting a diesel risk reduction plan to go after other kinds of sources. So that this program has in the past brought real emission reduction benefits.
And Dr. Burke, if I could also add, because I took Dr. Parker's question to be broader as well, not just the expanded monitoring associated with the MATES, but all of our monitoring efforts. AQ-SPEC as an example, the toxics monitoring that we're doing. How do we collect all that data and disseminate, and how do we use that data? And the data that's being collected is utilized in the information that's available to the public. It informs the public about what's out there. It informs us as to what rules are perhaps necessary. And the best example of that, I think, is what we've seen in Paramount, where there is a number of rules that are now being addressed because of the monitoring efforts. And one of the biggest challenges, as you pointed out, is the communication and the understanding, particularly when we look at it from an AQ-SPEC perspective, tied into the MATES. What does all this information mean? And again, as Dr. Fine pointed out, we are leading the nation, both working with the federal government and state government on the overall effectiveness of those monitoring and reporting programs.
Having problems with the audio at LA County.
Yeah, I see that.
They have the oatmeal again. They have two kinds.
I wanted to say, but you know, now let me leave until I ate.
That was it for my comments.
I guess all, we heard half of
I
it.
just got a text that's problems at LA County.
Put it up. Let's get that out. We're on. Still speaking back. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you fine. You're great.
Okay, we've been fixing it here, so it's fixed.
Yeah, yeah. In keeping with your remarks, Wayne, you know, I think I get a chance to talk to Dr. Barker about everything. I can't think of a subject, forget AQMD, that I don't talk to him about during the week or during the month. But I don't think I really talked to him about this because I know that I've been telling people that I really like the MATE study is such a landmark progressive study. I'd like to see it dial down even deeper and more detail. Now, that creates, as Clark was intimating, some self-flagellation. Because when you do that, you give the public the information to say, well, here on this corner over here, you're not doing so hot. Why don't you do better there? And then we got to go there and do better. But I think I'd rather have that than a population basking in ignorance and exposed to toxics that are not good for them, you know.
I think it's obviously something that is giving us a lot of information. And it's always to the same extent that you go to the doctor and he tells you got this, so you want to know what the cure is. Then he tells you what the cure is, but okay, who's going to perform the operation? And I think that to the extent itself of what we do is really kind of connecting the dots. So not only we're going to identify what the problem is, we're going to tell you what the cure is, and we're going to basically help you to perform that cure by making rules and regulations, et cetera. Now, obviously, all the staff there knows this and all the people who've been around. But when I go to these meetings, like the meetings that we were at last night and the ones that we've had before down in Torrance, I don't know if the people really understand totally what it is. I mean, several people came up and says, oh, you're going to tell us, I'd love to wake up in the morning and find out that the air is bad. That's great. But how are we going to clean the air up? What is it that we're going to be doing in order to be able to do that? So, we can overload the situation on one end, but basically undermine it from the expectation. Because, most of the people think that we are the saviors that are going to come down and we're going to go in and fix the refineries. We're going to, tell the refineries what they need to do in order to make sure that the air does not get polluted anymore. And I don't know if that's really kind of where we want it to stop. Obviously, that's part of our mission, So that's the reason why I asked the question, is that we can have all of this great information, but what are we going to basically be doing in reference to the expectations of trying to help those same folks believe that change itself is coming, or coming as rapidly as they think. You know, we put up a monitor, doesn't mean that the air is going to be cleaner tomorrow, or we're going to find out something that is there. Anyway, that's why I say this is not the time to have that ongoing discussion, but I think the discussion of this information and the depth of it, it certainly is very, very detailed and very needed in order for us to do a better job. And especially in some of these areas, now we're finding out that we didn't know anything about chromium, hexachromium, you know, and the kind of health, you know, adverse effects that it may have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you, but Torrance is a very interesting community. And I really enjoyed last night's meeting, you know, because I enjoy going to Torrance. I wasn't kidding when I said that when I came to California, Torrance was kind of my image of California, you know. So I walked out with a policeman who had 25 years with the Torrance Police Department. He said, you know, he said, your description of Torrance was exactly on as I remembered it as a child growing up in Torrance. He said it was spot on. He said, but I think you understand that what made this such an idyllic community was the fact that it had the refinery here. And it had the stability of employment. And I said, there's no question that is a piece in this matrix. So I don't know, it's like trying to move history back. Now we've really got ourselves into something in Torrance because it's like Clark says, these people expect us to save them. And quite frankly, I think that's our mission. So this one could really be a rough one. So, you know, everybody better get out their helmet. Because this game may go into overtime, you know, but I'm looking, if I'm around for all kind of, and about your monitoring, Wayne, the speaker, when I had lunch with him Friday, was extraordinarily impressed when I told him that you had provided for him more chromium testing than any other given area in the United States of America. I said, but testing doesn't save the people. I said, we have to reduce the amounts of emissions to save the people. And it may require even more testing and more funds. And let me tell you, he was very positive about everything in the discussion. So you got some real brownie points there. Moving on to item.
Dr. Burke, I believe we need a motion.
Yes.
I believe we need a motion to
On 11,
recognize the
right.
funds for the transfer.
I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Will the clerk call the roll?
Vice Chairman Rose, absent. Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
Dr. Parker,
Did you call my name? I didn't hear. Yes.
Dr. Burke,
Did you call Ben's name?
Ben's gone.
Ben's gone. Okay. Well, no, you didn't call Ben's name. Okay, yeah, I'm fine. I'm yes.
motion passes 3-0.
I didn't want Ben to be left out. When you left, it should have been like the wall moving over there. How could I miss that?
Are we having voice difficulties? Can everybody hear us?
Yes.
Okay, so item 11, what's the findings there, Nancy?
Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, that motion passes. Item number 12.
Morning, Dr. Burke and committee members. This item is to amend a contract for targeted outreach for the Right to Breathe video. Currently, we have a contract with Google that started January 2nd of this year and ends July 15th. This item is to extend that contract for another year in the amount of $250,000. Historically, we started with a 3-month program for the Google campaign in 2015. We saw how successful it was, and we continued on another campaign in late 2015 through late 2016. And this item, again, as I mentioned, is just to extend the contract, amended and extended for another year in the amount of $250,000. We ask for support on this item.
I have asked Councilman Cacchiotti, or is it Mayor Cacchiotti now?
I think it's Mayor. Mayor.
Nobody knows it's official.
Mayor.
It's the mayor? Anyway, I've asked Cacchiotti to modify the movie The Right to Breathe as our signature film, because it tells the story of this agency, and I think it's still extraordinarily powerful, but it's dated. So I asked him if he would get a hold of the producer and director, whoever, and have them update it and take out the people who are no longer here, put in people who are here, and just kind of give them the newest clue. And he said he would be glad to do that. So if we could ask the director, executive director, to be in touch with him to get that done, I'd appreciate that. And to be honest, I don't think $250,000 is enough money. So I'm going to offer a modification to this. I'm not going to increase the money, but I'm going to shorten the time of the deal until I think that it'll take them about a quarter to get this modification of the film done. So I think that I'm going to move that we approve this contract for $250,000 for Google to the Right to Breathe, not for a year, but to be spent in a quarter. And then we will revisit the new film and see what we want to do with that. And I would remind my colleagues that we, in fact, in December of I think it was last year, spent $800,000. No, it was the year before. I don't remember.
Yeah, it was
We spent 800. What year was it, Eric?
It was 2015 through October 2016.
2016. So yeah, it was a year ago, December. We spent $800,000, and we got just a unbelievable response. So my motion is, I've violated every Robert's Rule of Order that you can violate in making this motion, because I talked on it twice. But my motion is that we approve this contract for $250,000. Instead of the period being a year, it be 3 months. That's the end of my motion, and I'll see if I can get a second.
Second.
Surprise. Hey, man, I was counting on you. I want to talk to you about it, but we have a motion and a second. Nancy, would you please call the roll?
Vice Chair Benoit absent. Councilmember Mitchell?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes, if you're saying something, I can't hear you.
Yeah, we really can't hear you, Nancy. But both of us are saying yes.
Okay. Motion passes 3-0 with modification.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Alatorre, this item 13 then is
It's a written report, sir.
just a report. It's just a report, right?
Yes,
You see
sir.
the
As is the
file.
next one.
How about 14?
Same thing, sir. Written report.
Okay, Mr. Nastri?
This is just a review of the upcoming July Governing Board agenda. We will have additional public hearing items due to the fact that we weren't able to get through all of the items from last week. And I do believe that there's some considerations that are currently under review. Dr. Burke, that we can speak to you perhaps later this afternoon or early next week.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Gotta figure out which one my counts. No problem.
Okay.
But he's gonna have to explain to me how this meets Kurt's test of
72 hours.
72 hours, you know, because I could hear it all the way from Clark's forehead, man. It was springing forth, okay? So, you know, you can't have one rule for somebody and another rule for somebody else. So I'm sure that there's a, you don't have to tell me now, Kirk, you can call me later.
Thanks, Dr. Burke.
Okay. Do we have any other business before the board? Committee? Do we have any public comment at CCA?
None here.
Okay. Well, then that concludes the administrative committee for June 9th.